Yeah, hi everybody. Good noon, afternoon, whatever it is. So yeah, it was a very nice session by Kim on the DevSecOps, and this topic also is in similar lines, I would say. It's on Kubernetes to the rescue of containers. Why did I choose such a topic? I would explain during the presentation. So before to that, my introduction, I'm working in IT industry for around 16 years. I was into telecom domain as an hardcore layer 2, layer 3 protocol developer. And then slowly I drifted towards OpenStack and then went to DevOps, did a lot of AWS, Azure, and Google certifications as well. And these days, my passion is to prepare microservices type of based applications because I'm bored or have a lot of pain with monolithic applications. I've worked in the past. So microservices and containers go hand in hand, and when we have containers, Kubernetes is the best solution for that. So that's my brief introduction. I would just like to ask a small question. How many of you are already aware of containers? Or you guys can raise your hand. Already working on it? Awesome. Around 30–40%. Kubernetes, how many people are already using or have worked on it earlier in the past? Okay, quite a, just one or two hands. So agenda for today's session is we would understand what exactly is a container and why people, the complete shift of the IT has become towards container. They have totally shifted from virtual machines to container world. We'll try and understand why exactly that's happened. What are the benefits of containerization? Why do we need to do that? What benefits do we fetch out of it? And there would be a small demo to teach how to prepare a container image so that we would use that image to deploy applications in our Kubernetes cluster. What benefit do we get in Kubernetes, and why do we move from Docker to Kubernetes? Why Docker is not a complete solution, and why Kubernetes is a complete solution? We will discuss about it. And benefits of using Kubernetes, what do we get out of it? And then deploying a highly available application in our Kubernetes cluster, we'll see that. We would learn how to scale, how to upgrade, how to downgrade. Normally when we are in production, you go from version 1 to version 2. If something has gone wrong, you go back to version 1, right? So those things. And today I'm running 3 servers. My app is a big hit. From 3 to 30 servers, how do I scale in seconds? So that we would be seeing, and there would be a short demo on that as well. So let's try and understand when we say what exactly is a container, we would compare it to a virtual machine, which we have been using. So there was a complete shift in the era when physical servers to virtual machine shift came, right? When VMware came with virtual machines, there was I would say there was a complete revolution in the market, and everyone started using virtual machine. Why people did that? Because when we had physical servers, if I had to deploy an application in that physical server, I could deploy only one application. And there was no way to deploy another application and not have that surety that it will not interfere with each other and they would run happily, right? So what we used to do, if I have to deploy another application, I have to get another set of servers. So hardware used to be pretty costly, and that optimization was done by virtual machines. So infrastructure was there, and you have the hypervisors. Then you get multiple machines working on the same infrastructure or the piece of hardware, and they are not interfering with each other. You dedicate some resources like CPU, memory, and all, and they run happily sitting next to each other. But the pain point was this operating system. We had you can have an operating system here as well, and these operating systems were the full-fledged operating system. When we are starting a virtual machine, it is taking around 2 to 3 minutes to boot because the virtual machine boots up with a complete operating system. And just imagine if I'm running my website, like for example, DigitalOcean.com is running on virtual machines, and tomorrow I have to scale from 2 to 5 machines because of increased number of requests. It would take some time to really boot up those machines and start serving. And that's not seconds or milliseconds or whatever it is. It would be in minutes to scale up those, right? That is because this guest OS takes time, and it was eating up the resources as well. So if I have to, like for example, I have hardware of 32 GB RAM, and I have to dedicate 4 GB RAM for each of them. Then the resources like the CPU utilization. So operating system also used to eat some resources, which was not allowing us to deploy lot of machines on the same piece of hardware. So that was one of the drawback. And when you package the image of your virtual machine, it becomes very bulky because the operating system also gets packaged together. Like for example, if you take consider RHEL 7.3, it comes as 8 GB. So if I have to give an image to the test team, it becomes like a 8 GB for the operating system itself, and then my application, binaries, libraries, and all that. So it becomes a very huge package. And dependencies would not get captured because it didn't have that intelligence. So these are few of the drawbacks which we lived with because it was better than physical machines. Then came the era of containers has arrived, in which we have the host operating system on top of our hardware. On top of it, there is a small software which runs like any containerization software. For example, Docker is pretty famous, so I've labeled as Docker. There is Apache Mesos, there are Linux containers. A lot of technologies fit in that particular block. So Docker engine takes the responsibility of creating those containers, and they don't have a full-fledged operating system sitting inside each of the application containers. That's the reason the boot up time is quick, the killing down time is quick, and when you take an image of it, like normally in cloud, when you guys talk about, you take a snapshot, you say, right? So if I want to take an image and give it to someone to test or to deploy, it would be very small. It would be nearly equal to your application's image, and a small piece of operating system which is only needed to boot your application. Only that would get packaged. So what would happen? My packaging is good, my boot up time is good, my utilization of underlying hardware is better compared to virtual machines, because operating system is not sitting in those many containers, and it becomes it gives us more space and resources to run many more containers compared to the number of virtual machines. Then coming to the dependencies, which was one more drawback of virtual machine. If I'm taking the image of a container, it captures all the dependencies. If I run that container in my laptop, in my Mac OS as a Linux container, I can run it in a cloud. Any environment you say, it would run as it is, because it captures all the dependencies. It makes it agnostic of the underlying operating system. It's not dependent on that. So these are few of the advantages. That's the reason people are adopting towards container. So consistent environment, it would run anywhere and everywhere. It is lightweight and easier, and effective isolation and resource sharing is done. Your containers will not fight with each other for resource sharing and all. You can define the amount of resource each of the containers can use up to. And you can improve the development pipeline, the CI/CD pipeline, and a lot more things can be implemented as well. So here I would show you a small demo, how to create a Docker container. To save my time, I have written the commands over here so that I can just copy paste. Hopefully this font size is okay, visible. So I have a Docker file. When we are planning to prepare an image, we should have, like for example, if you're taking a web server, how do you prepare a web server? You take a base operating system, you put the web server package and make it as a web server, right? You are putting a HTTPS, Apache server, whatever you want to put, and you make it as a web server, and you put your index.html and all that stuff, and then it starts serving as a web server. So here also it would do that way. I'll just show you the Docker file which I have. I am trying to build a Node.js type of application. So this is the way the Docker file is written. Because of the time constraint, I would not explain the learning, the step-by-step of creation of a Docker file. Rather, I would focus on how to build an image out of it. So to build an image, you have to run, if I have a Docker file, you learn the art of writing a Docker file, and there is an art of writing a good Docker file as well, so that the complexity is less, the time consuming is less, number of layers are less, a lot of things comes into picture. So I am preparing an image out of it. It ran too quick because I had run this command earlier as well. And step by step, it goes through each of the lines in the Docker files, prepares and gives me an image. You can go and check the image which we created using the command docker images. And Mamta J, Mamta J / node hyphen demo version 1 is the image which I have created. Similarly, you can create several images. Now I will show that this particular container would run in this machine on my local host, this Mac machine, and same image I would take and run it in Kubernetes cluster. So my machine is a Mac OS machine in which I have installed Docker. And it is not, the image, it's so independent of the setup that it would run as it is anywhere and everywhere. So let's prepare a container out of it. So Docker build command was to build the image, Docker images was to list the images, and Docker run command is to create or run a container out of it. So this command I would like to explain. Docker run, I'm naming the container as node demo hyphen version 1. I'm naming the container like that, and I'm saying that my container is listening on port number 8080, and on this local machine, I would map the port to port number 80. That means on this hardware, port number 80, whatever packet comes, port number 80 is normal HTTP, right? So if I just say in my Google Chrome localhost, it would go to port number 80, and that request will actually go to this container, and we can see the web page there. And I am giving the image -d is for the image with which it should spin up. So let's create the container. Container is created. You see, it took just milliseconds to spin up this container. You can list the container using docker ps command. This container is up and running. So let's open our Chrome. Localhost, this web page is accessible, and this is the Node.js application which I have deployed. This was the actual package which I was using, the Node.js application package. So I am serving this container from my personal laptop at this point of time, and now we would deploy the same container in our Kubernetes cluster. So we'll switch to our slides and see what advantages do we get and why Kubernetes comes into picture. So when Docker came into the market, they just came with a containerization tool. They never came with the orchestration tool. They later came with the orchestration and management tool called as Docker Swarm. By the time, Kubernetes had already captured the market because Docker became very popular. People started adapting containers, and Google saw that people are adapting and using that for production as well. But Docker alone was not suitable for production, so Kubernetes was the open source project which Google contributed to Cloud Native Computing Foundation. So Google has been using this Kubernetes day in and day out in all the applications we are using, starting from Drive to Maps to anything of Google is working with containers, right? They are using this. That project inside Google is called as Borg, but when they contributed, they named it as Kubernetes. So I showed you that we can spin up a container, but it is listening on port number 80. It doesn't have the intelligence. If a packet comes on port number 80, it can distribute across several containers, right? Today, I am just running one container. Too much of load has come. I can run many containers because this is a 16 GB RAM machine. Several containers can run, but that distribution, if a container went down, again get it up, manage the complete life cycle, that is not there. That intelligence is not there with Docker, plain Docker. Plus one more drawback, if there are multiple machines. In production, I will not go with a set of server, run hundreds of containers in that and say everything is running. End of the day, it is a hardware. If that gets spoiled, something is wrong with the hardware, all the containers are dead, right? So I would not rely on a single piece of hardware at any point of time. Rather, I would have multiple servers and I'll run 100 or 1,000 containers in that. So to do that, Docker doesn't have the intelligence of setting up the network or sending the packet from one container running on one server to another container running on the other server. So it didn't have the overlay type of networking intelligence. It could set up a bridge and connect across containers within the same host. But when you have multiple machines running, it didn't do that. That's the reason Kubernetes came into picture. So Kubernetes is the open source project, and enterprise version of this is called as OpenShift as well. So what all it helps us, now I have a single machine, I run 100 containers, 200 containers, it will run in that machine itself, right? It will use that server itself. But if I have 2 machines and I want to spin a container, it should check which machine should I launch my container. That intelligence comes with Kubernetes. It does scheduling for us. It will identify which piece of hardware is the best to host our container at this point of time. So that is scheduling. Controlling is, as I mentioned, if something is going down, bringing up again, scaling, and rolling out the new changes, all those things comes in the controller. There are different controllers here, like few applications you want to be ever running, like web server type of application. For example, Amazon, Flipkart, it will never go down, right? You will not shut down those websites. So those are ever running type of application. Few applications are like cron jobs. You just run them as a job, you expect them to finish. So there are controllers for the cron job type of thing. There are controllers for ever running type of softwares. Few are stateful applications like databases and all. We have a different set of controllers for them. Few are like daemon type of applications, like for example, logging, monitoring type of application, or a storage type of application, which you want one particular instance to run only in one server. You will not have 3-4 containers running in that server, right? So those would be a daemon set type of controllers. There are several controllers like that. And then Kubernetes helps us in scaling, monitoring, a lot of other things are also there. The packet monitoring, a lot of tools in and around Kubernetes have come these days, which help us doing many more things in depth. Like when you have time, you can go and read about projects like Istio. A lot of things are happening in the market in this sector of Kubernetes. A lot of projects are coming which get integrated automatically with Kubernetes. Let it be a CI/CD one, or let it be a security related one, anything. So we would say this is a single man army which can do a lot of things. Let's see how does the Kubernetes cluster look like. So normally when we have, we are saying we are setting up a Kubernetes cluster, we would have master and worker nodes. This is the place where our application containers would run. Containers are called as pod in terms of Kubernetes. We would see what exactly it means. And master node is the one which actually has the complete management intelligence. It would help us manage, scale, schedule, everything relies there. So when we are saying we are using services, like for example, I would be showing a demo on Docker Kubernetes, DigitalOcean's Kubernetes services, which is a managed service. So management of master is a big pain or headache, or it's a lot of effort is needed, a lot of intelligence of Kubernetes is needed. But these days people just want, you know, application coding, you can prepare an image, you should be able to run containers and use your cluster, right? So you focus on this as a developer, and that is for the operations or the DevOps engineer type. These are few of the components which are running, like API server is the one. If I'm running any of the commands, it would receive the request. etcd is the key value pair. Database complete cluster configuration is saved there, which container is running where, how many replicas of that container is running, what is the CPU usage, everything would be updated in the etcd. And scheduler is the one which takes the decision of scheduling, and controller manager is the one. I mentioned all the types of controllers, right? Daemon type of controller, stateful type of controller, cron job type of controller, a job type of controller, deployment type of controller. That is that block. And when we focus on the Kubernetes node. These are also called as worker nodes. And in this, the kubelet is the agent which would get indications or the actions from the master and does the execution. I mentioned that pod and containers are like synonym. In Kubernetes world, we call them as pods. So here we say smallest deployable, creatable, killable runnable unit is called as pod. If you start them, they will start together. It could be that your container is sitting with another container in the same pod, but we want to do that way when it is highly needed. They have to be together. Like, for example, my application container is not intelligent to push the logs to a hard drive which is attached to it, right? I would run something called as Splunk agent, which will pull the logs and push it to the drive. So in that case, running Splunk alone doesn't make any sense because application is not there with that. And application running alone, I can't get the logs. So I make them sit together and run in a pod. In that case, they would be very tightly coupled. They will start together. They will shut down together. A lot of things would be tied up. And they'll get the same IP address, but the port numbers would be different. So I'll show the deployment. Deployment is a type of controller in which you can say that I want to have these many number of replicas, and it gives you a guarantee that those many number of containers of this application would be up and running at any point of time. Like, for example, in this I'm showing a Python application. I'm creating 3 containers and I'm tying them together in something called as replica set. Replica set I'll explain in the next slide. And wrapping up them as a deployment. I'm saying this is a deployment. My deployment, same piece of code is running in 3 places. And when the user wants to reach, it would be like distributed. Load would be load balanced across 3 of the containers. So here it is container 1, container 2, container 3. It may be running anywhere in the cluster, but my load would get shared across each of them. Okay, so same code is running, that is important, then only they form a deployment. So what is, So I'll show the deployment. So I have created a deployment file over here. So if you see this section says kind deployment. In Kubernetes, whenever you are trying to create a kind of resource, you will have to specify the kind of resource you want to create. You're seeing this kind deployment, that is the kind I want to create. When I say deployment, a controller gets created and it will make sure that at any point of time, one replica is always running. If I want to make it 200 also, it will sit and monitor 200 replicas. So I'm creating a deployment and I'm saying that in that I would have container, Node.js container with that image which we had seen, and it is listening. Our container was listening on port number 8080. The packet was coming on this local host at 80 and it was getting directed to container at port number 8080. So I'm saying container is opening port number 8080 and replicas are 1. And this is the particular image. So let's go ahead and create. So for Kubernetes, kubectl create is the command, and you provide your application, whatever file you have created, that you provide. So here it would go ahead and create this. Okay, I have already created. Okay, deployment got created. Services I had not deleted because load balancer would take some time to get created. So I had retained the load service. We have to reach there from outside. So I'll get the deployment. So here it says ready is 1, available is 1, 22 seconds ago it has got created. And what exactly it has created? It has created pods inside that, which is actually the container. So one pod is up and running. So I'll just pick up the load balancer's IP address. I'll pick up this load balancer's IP address. I would be able to reach that application container from this IP address. I think that stitch up hasn't happened. Actually, that page should open up. It should be able to reach that. I'll just check what exactly has happened. So packet is coming to that, and it would direct it to the container on port number 8080 over here. So container's IP address is mentioned. You can see which get pods -o white. So this would give us the IP address of the container, that is container's IP address. It is up and running. Now I'll scale this application and I'll show that I can run 3 replicas of it. So I'm saying to scale. So what would happen now if I go and do kubectl get pods, I would see 2 more containers getting created, and now 3 containers are running and serving the same application at this point of time. So I can maximize, minimize, whatever I want to do, I can do. This I'm typing in as a command. You can automate this complete process altogether. And you can edit the deployment. I have created with version 1. I want to create with version 2 now. So I will go and do, this is the file I want to edit. This is the deployment's actual running file. I created with kubectl create command and provided a file, right? When it ran, this is the file which is up and running in the system, in the cluster. So I'm just replacing this with 2. I have an image ready for a different application altogether. I want to show you that as soon as you do this, your older containers will stop running. First, it will create new containers. It will wait for them to be functional. The default timer is 60 seconds, and then it would go ahead and terminate the old containers. So now what has happened? I am doing like a blue-green type of deployment. In your production, you want to go from version 1 to version 2. You don't want your users or the customers to know that you went from version 1 to version 2, right? You do a switch completely. Here it has done a switch from version 1 to version 2. Okay, so here it is running this second. I will show you how to check which version exactly it is running. You can describe any of the resources. You can say deployment, and name of the deployment is Node.js. So here you can scroll up and see it would say with which image it is running at this point of time. And here, this is the image it is running with this at this point of time. And one more thing I can show you, kubectl get replica set. I have 2 replica sets. I showed you in that picture, replica set was there and then the deployment was there. This was the older replica set with version 1 software, and this is the second replica set with version 2 software. So let me switch to the slide and show you exactly how it happened. So I had a deployment with replica set 1, which was serving version 1, and user was able to reach that, right? Now I created version 2. It created one more replica set. Set is, it will replicate the complete set. That's the reason it is called as replica set. And it checks things are working fine, but it is not shifting the traffic. Once that is up and running, then it goes and kills and switches immediately the traffic over there. So no one is seeing version 1 and version 2 together. Rather, users are seeing version 1 and then they switch immediately to version 2. And if you want to scale, I did that from 1 to 3 we did. So we are adding one more, and now the load balancing starts happening across these many. So this is how I want to delete. I can go ahead and delete, and it would run with only those 3 containers. So you can do all these, and I would show you how to roll back as well. There are commands in the deployment which will help us to go back to version 1 again. So you can check the rollout history. This will give you 2 versions over here. It says version 1, version 2. While rolling out, I didn't give a comment. That's the reason it is not listing any comment. Version 1 is the, revision 1 is the version 1. Revision 2 is the one which is running at this point of time. And I would say that you do the undo deployment to version 1. So it will go to version 1 again. Let's go and describe the deployment and see which image is running now. Sorry, I picked up the mistake wala command. It has switched back to version 1 image. So it was running version 2. Now it has switched back to version 1 image. Now let's go and see kubectl get pods. It would have terminated the 3 pods which was running version 2 and has gone back to the version 1. So what it is doing, it is creating version 1.3, which is the complete replica set, checking version 1s are stable, moving the traffic to that, deleting this version 2. So that's what the rollback and roll forward, what upgrade, both the things we can see. Yeah, so this is exactly what I had. So Kubernetes is giving us lot of options in which you can roll forward, roll backward, upgrade. You can do a lot of CI/CD integration. You can scale. I showed a single command. I want to go to 200 containers as well. I can do that. So you just need to run the scale command. I'm scaling the deployment, and you want to say scale it to 100, 300, whatever it is, it would do that. At this point of time, my one machine is not having sufficient processing capabilities to accommodate 300 containers. So what would happen? It would go and connect to my DigitalOcean's console. I'll show that. This is the control panel for DigitalOcean. This is the cluster which is up and running. In that, I had only one node. This is the pool. In that, only one node is running. Now, when I mentioned that there should be 300 containers on that machine and the space is not enough, it will spin up one more machine in the cluster, attach it, and those new containers will move to that. So it will take some time. That's the reason it is pending, because it is not having enough resources to spin those containers on that particular machine. How many ever containers can spin on the node 1, it will spin, and the node 2, when it is up and running, it will switch to that. So you can always go ahead. I have put a watch command so that whatever update happens on this particular command output, it will show continuously. And you can always use kubectl get pods -o wide and see the IP addresses used by these containers. In case there are 2 different IP addresses, that means one container is in one node and the other container is in the other node. So this is what I had. We are doing a lot of webinars and workshops in DigitalOcean. So there is a webinar going on. One session has happened. It's a 5-session webinar series. You can log into docode/webinars and register for that. And even we have a free trial pack. You can go to that link and you get a $50 credit, and you can spin up your own cluster and check how to work with Kubernetes in case you want to give it a try. And this is my LinkedIn, and that's my Twitter account, and that's my website. If you have any comments, you can post in there. Hope so you like the session. Thanks for bearing with me. Thank you.